Well, good evening, folks. It's Sunday night, and as usual, I'd like to give you a little review of where we went last week and where we're going with this week in the course. But first, I'd like to start with just a little message of thanking you all for your participation and working around the technical difficulties we had with the Blackboard system last week. It was, we call it was up, it was down, it was back up, back down. Caused some delays, caused some problems for you folks, caused some problems for us on the professor side of things. I apologize for the lateness of the grades, but I think we got everybody graded and with some commentary and some input for you, which I believe is important. So my apologies for not getting it in sooner. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get in to do the work. And hopefully the system will behave now and we're back to where we should be. So I do want to thank everybody for their patience. As usual, it was a very, very good discussion last week. And the reason we enter that discussion about stakeholder, stockholder, very interesting discussion, I think, that needs to be had all the time. It seems like most people wanted to talk about how their organizations, that you really felt they were being run on a stakeholder approach. And I think you will agree that as you start to examine the Baldrige criteria and the Baldrige principles in a little bit more detail, that that's the approach we do want to take. But you also saw, and if you review some of the material that's in last week and the way we looked at it before, and the way you've maybe brought in some other sources, people have different definitions of stakeholder. I've always said it's anybody who has a material interest in the operation and the outcome of your business. And one of the examples that I love to use is I once had a consulting client, a service providing company that had about 75 employees, and I was engaged along with a couple of my partners to do some organizational analysis and some strategic planning work for them. And as we began the requisite interviews to get the process going, the executive vice president, and I believe he was about a 1/3 owner of the company, made a very interesting comment to me. The company had about 75 employees at the time, and the comment that this executive made to me was that he wasn't responsible for 75 people. He viewed himself as being responsible for about 300 people. And when I asked him what he meant by that, he immediately, without hesitancy, replied, well, a lot of these people are very important to the financial health and well-being of their families. And those families, those extra couple hundred people, are very dependent on what we do here. They're just as much stakeholders in the success of the business as my partner and I are, and our employees directly are. So he got it, if you ask me. He understood the concept of the stakeholder. And also in the second writing assignment that you were asked to do, I asked you to talk about the concepts of internal and external customer, which are some things that we hear an awful lot about, but sometimes we see actions that are contrary to the words and the terminology. And perhaps a little later I'll introduce some of my more maybe a little outspoken arguments on those. But for the time being, let's just take a look at what you wrote, and I'll be responding to that this week. But a big part of the Baldrige idea is this idea of the voice of the customer, both internal and external. Listen to the people who have a stake in your business. Listen to what their needs are, and what does your business, your organization, your group do for them. If it doesn't meet their needs, then is it really providing quality in all its many definitions? So that's why that's there, and I really urge people to give this some real serious thought, even after now that we've passed through that unit. Okay, this week we're going to come into an almost equally important concept in the whole idea of quality, and that's measurement. Okay, measurement and metrics. You know, Baldrige talks about management based on fact, decision making based on fact. Well, how do you get facts? Well, you take measurements. You measure reality. You analyze. You come up with not opinions but data, right? I once saw on a client's wall the little sign that said, "In God we trust," everyone else brings data. And that's got to have some real truth to it in business. We need to look at things very objectively so we make sound and objective decisions. But that's the hang-up, right? A lot of times we measure stuff and then we wonder, what do we do with it? Well, Baldrige is very big on the concept of what we call closing the loop. And in closing the loop not only means that you measure and analyze your actions and your activities, but that you do something to make changes and improvements according to the data and measurements that you have collected. It's not enough just to collect data, and data is meaningless if you don't do something with it. So this week we're concentrating heavily on the ideas of metrics and measurements. So you've been provided with a number of examples and a number of sources of how metrics, measurements, management information, how it's all gathered, how it's used, and what does that mean to us. So that's where we're going this week. I, as usual, thank everybody for their participation, and I'm looking forward to reading your comments and your actions on the idea of how your business was managed was in the discussion board. That was great. What do you think about internal and external customers? And I think it flows and links right into this whole idea of measurements and taking action. All right, if there are any questions, please, you folks know where to get me, and I'll try to get you an answer right away. Thanks again.